You always do this, Ryan. Every single time there is a family gathering, you turn it into some kind of performance. I had barely set the potato salad on the kitchen counter when my son slammed his car keys onto the table, so hard the fruit bowl rattled. "Oh, here we go," he said, throwing his hands up. "You walk in and start judging before anyone even says hello." "I am not judging you. I am asking one simple question. Why did you lie to your father?" My husband, Daniel, was standing by the sink with that tired look he wore whenever peace was slipping through his fingers. He rubbed the side of his face and sighed. "Linda, please," he said softly. "Not today." "Not today." I turned to him, hurt rising so fast I could feel it burning in my throat. "Then when? When his lies cost us something again? When we are all sitting here pretending everything is fine?" Ryan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You know what, Mom? This is why nobody wants to be around you for long. You never let anything go." The room went quiet. That was the thing about betrayal. It rarely arrived wearing a stranger's face. Sometimes it came from the child you had once stayed up all night rocking through a fever. Sometimes it looked like your own flesh and blood, standing in your kitchen, talking to you like you were the enemy. I folded my arms so he would not see my hands shaking. "Tell your father the truth." Ryan stared at me for a second, jaw tight. Then he looked at Daniel. "I already told him what mattered." "No," I said. "You told him what made you look better." My daughter-in-law, Melissa, stepped into the room from the hallway, already dressed for the reunion in a pale blue dress that somehow still looked expensive even in soft morning light. She had perfect hair, perfect makeup, and the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "Can we please not do this right now?" she asked. "We are supposed to be leaving in 20 minutes. "Then maybe your husband should explain why he called asking for money again last week, after promising us he was finally stable." Ryan turned red. "I paid that back." "You paid part of it back." Daniel looked at me, his face worn down. "Linda." "No, Daniel, I'm tired." I looked back at Ryan. "I am tired of pretending your father and I are not the ones cleaning up every mess while you act like we owe you for being your parents." Melissa crossed her arms. "That's unfair." "Unfair?" I let out a short laugh. "You two live above your means, borrow money, lie about bills, and then act insulted when somebody notices." Ryan took a step toward me. "You have no idea what pressure I'm under." "Then tell the truth about it." His expression changed for a second. Not softer, not sorry, just colder. "You really want the truth." Daniel straightened. "Ryan." But Ryan was already looking at me with a bitterness I had never seen so plainly before. "The truth is," he said, "everything with this family has always been about you. Your rules, your standards, your disappointment. Even now, you're making today about yourself." That hit harder than I expected. Because part of being a mother is carrying every cruel word your child says, even when you know they are saying it to wound you. You still hear the baby in their voice. You still remember tiny fingers wrapped around yours. I swallowed. If you believe that, then I failed somewhere. For one second, I thought he might soften too. Instead, he picked up his keys. "Good, maybe now you get it." He brushed past me and walked out. Melissa gave me a thin look before following him. "We'll meet you there." The front door shut. The whole house felt empty after that. Daniel leaned both hands on the counter and looked down. That could have gone better. I turned on him so quickly even I was surprised. "Better? You mean if I smiled and said nothing while he lies to your face?" "He is still our son. And I am still his mother. That doesn't mean I have to help him destroy himself." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "He told me he just needed one more chance." I stared at him. "You gave him money again." He did not answer fast enough. My stomach dropped. "Daniel." "It wasn't much." "How much?" He looked ashamed. 5,000. I felt like the floor had tilted under me. $5,000 from our savings. He said it was temporary. I backed up until my legs hit a chair. "You promised me. After the last time, you promised me no more secrets." His voice broke a little. "I know." That hurt almost more than Ryan's words. My husband and I had spent 36 years building a life brick by brick. We were not rich, but we were careful. We had plans. We had peace, or at least something close to it. And every time Ryan fell into trouble, he came with that same desperate voice, and Daniel forgot every lesson pain had already taught him. I sat down slowly. Outside, I could hear a lawn mower somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barking, the ordinary sounds of a Saturday morning. It was strange how life could look so normal while something inside your home was quietly cracking open. After a long silence, Daniel said, "Maybe today will help being around family. Maybe he'll calm down." I almost said I didn't want to go anymore. I almost said that every reunion lately turned into a theater of fake smiles and hidden wounds. But my sister Carol had called twice this week, begging us not to miss it. She said everybody would be there. She said Ryan had helped organize the location because this year they wanted it to feel special. That thought made me look up. "Wait," I said slowly. "Ryan picked the location." Daniel nodded. "A rented lodge by the lake. Why?" I frowned. "Since when does Ryan organize family events?" He shrugged. "Carol said he wanted to make peace." I looked toward the window, but I was no longer seeing the yard. I was seeing little things I had ignored. Ryan suddenly acting eager. Melissa pushing hard for us to come. Carol being strangely vague whenever I asked who else was attending. And last night, when I called my niece Jenna to ask what food I should bring, she sounded confused and said, "I thought Aunt Carol already told you." Told me what? Back then, I had brushed it off. Now a cold feeling moved through me. I stood up too fast. "Call Carol." Daniel blinked. "What?" "Call her now." He pulled out his phone, confused, and dialed. It rang once, then went to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. I was already walking toward the hallway to get my purse. "We are going, but we are not trusting this blindly." Daniel followed me. "Linda, what are you talking about?" "I don't know yet," I said, grabbing my phone with trembling fingers. "But something is wrong." He stared at me. "Wrong how?" I looked him dead in the face, and for the first time that day, fear rose above anger. "The kind of wrong a mother feels before the truth arrives," I said. "And if I'm right, our son hasn't invited us to a reunion." I paused, my hand gripping the doorframe. "He's luring us somewhere for a reason." "We're not going," Daniel said the second we got into the car. "If you think something is off, then we turn around now and go home." I shut my door and stared through the windshield, trying to steady my breathing. Ryan and Melissa had left almost 15 minutes earlier, and for a moment I wished we had simply let them go and stayed out of it. But fear has a way of pushing you forward when common sense begs you to stop. "No," I said quietly. "We go far enough to find out what this is." Daniel turned to me. "Linda, if we go home now, we learn nothing. And if something really is wrong, then I need to know before anyone else gets dragged into it." He gripped the steering wheel, but did not start the engine. "You really think our own son would set us up?" That question cut deeper than anything Ryan had said in the kitchen. I looked down at my hands. "I think our son is desperate. I think desperate people start calling ugly things by nicer names. Pressure becomes bad luck. Lying becomes protecting people. Betrayal becomes doing what you have to do." Daniel said nothing. I turned to him. "Start driving." The route to the lake lodge took us out past the older neighborhoods, then farther into a quiet stretch of road lined with trees and wide empty lots. It was the kind of road that looked harmless in daylight, almost pretty in a lonely way. Daniel drove with both hands tight on the wheel, and I kept checking my phone even though Carol still had not returned any of my calls. About 20 minutes in, my sister finally answered. "Carol," I said at once, "where are you?" There was a pause, too long. "At home," she said. I felt my whole body go cold. "At home?" "Yes, why?" I turned sharply toward Daniel. He glanced at me, alarmed. "What do you mean, why?" I said. "The reunion, we're on the way." Another pause, then Carol laughed nervously. "Linda, the reunion was moved to next Saturday. Ryan said he told you. For a second, I could not speak. Linda, Carol said, are you there? I swallowed hard. Did Ryan ask you to say anything else to me? No, why? What's going on? I looked out the window. The trees felt darker now, the road narrower, too empty. Nothing, I lied. I'll call you later. I ended the call and turned to Daniel. Turn the car around right now. He did not ask questions. He just did it. The tires hit gravel as he swung the car hard toward the shoulder, then reversed into a shaky turn. His face had drained of color. There is no reunion, he asked. Next Saturday. He muttered something under his breath I had not heard him say in years. That was when I saw the truck. Black, lifted, coming fast from the bend behind us. Daniel, I said. I see it. The truck sped up the moment we turned. Not normal road speed, not somebody trying to get past. It was coming right at us. Daniel hit the gas. My heart slammed against my ribs. Don't go back the same way, I said. Take the side road we passed. That dirt road. Yes. He drove another 100 yards, then cut sharply onto the narrow side road almost hidden by overgrown brush. The car jolted so hard my shoulder hit the door. Dust exploded behind us. The truck missed the turn at first, overshot, then backed up. Oh my God, Daniel whispered. Now there was no pretending. He pushed the car harder down the rough road. I clutched the seat and looked back. The truck was coming after us, bouncing hard over the uneven ground. I dialed 911 with shaking fingers. My voice sounded thin and strange as I gave our location the best I could. The operator told us to stay on the line, keep driving, head toward the highway if possible. I wanted to ask 100 questions, but the only thing in my head was one terrible thought. Ryan knew we would be on that road. Daniel took a sharp curve, and the truck behind us fishtailed, losing a little distance. Ahead, the dirt road opened toward a gas station near the highway, a sad little place with 2 pumps and a faded sign. It had never looked so beautiful in my life. There, I said, they're there. Daniel shot into the gas station lot, horn blaring. 2 men near the pumps turned, startled. The truck slowed at the edge of the road. For one hopeful second, I thought it was over. Then the passenger window rolled down. I could not see the driver well, but I saw enough. A baseball cap, dark beard, sunglasses, a man I did not know. The truck sat there for half a breath, then peeled away in a storm of dust. Daniel stopped the car so suddenly we both jerked forward. He was breathing hard, both hands still locked on the wheel. The 911 operator was speaking, but I could barely hear her over the pounding in my ears. We waited for the sheriff's deputy at the gas station. I sat on a cracked plastic chair outside the little store while Daniel spoke to the first officer who arrived. I watched cars come and go on the highway and kept thinking how close ordinary life can be to disaster without anyone seeing it. When Daniel finally came back to me, he looked 10 years older. They'll file a report, he said. They want to know if we can identify anybody. We can't. He sat beside me. Linda. I already knew what he was about to say. If Ryan did this, he began. I turned toward him. Do not finish that sentence unless you are ready to believe it. He looked away. That was when my phone buzzed. Ryan. For a second, I just stared at his name on the screen. Put it on speaker, Daniel said. I answered. Mom, Ryan sounded breathless, worried, almost frantic. Where are you? We've been waiting. I said nothing. Mom. There is no reunion today. Silence. Then, what? Carol is at home. She said it was moved to next Saturday. Another silence, shorter this time. Then he said, I don't know why she'd say that. It was a bad lie, a weak one, the kind people use when the better lies are gone. I felt something settle inside me, something cold and final. Someone chased us off the road, I said. This time, the silence was longer. When Ryan spoke again, his voice had changed. Not much, just enough for a mother to hear what a stranger would miss. Are you okay? I closed my eyes. I remembered his first day of kindergarten, when he cried because he did not want me to leave. I remembered his broken arm at 9, the way he had leaned against me in the emergency room. I remembered baking birthday cakes, sitting through baseball games in the heat, helping with science projects, staying awake when he had nightmares. And now I was listening to my son act surprised that we were still alive. "We're fine," I said. "Mom, listen, maybe you should just come to the lodge and we can talk." That did it. I opened my eyes and stared straight ahead at the road that had almost swallowed us. "No," I said. "Now you listen to me. Whatever you planned failed. Whatever lie you told, whatever mess you dragged us into, it ends today." His breathing sharpened. "Mom, I can explain." "Then start praying you get the chance." I ended the call. Daniel looked at me. "What now?" I stood slowly, my knees weak but my mind suddenly clear. "Now," I said, "we find out who my son owes, what he promised them, and why he thought handing over his own parents was the answer." Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was not Ryan. It was Melissa. And the message was only 6 words long. "Do not go home. They know." For a few seconds, I could not breathe. I stared at Melissa's message until the words blurred. "Do not go home. They know." Daniel took the phone from my hand and read it twice. "What does that mean?" "It means this is bigger than Ryan," I said. The deputy was still parked near the gas station store, talking to the clerk. I looked toward him, then back at Daniel. "We show him the message." The deputy read it with the same flat expression officers always seem to wear when they know something is bad, but are still deciding how bad. He asked if Melissa had called before, if she seemed afraid, if Ryan had any known debts, gambling problems, business deals, or enemies. I almost laughed at that last word. "Enemies," I said. "At this point, I don't even know if my son is the victim or the bait." The deputy asked for Ryan's number and Melissa's number, then told us not to return home until they had a patrol car near the house. He suggested a hotel in town and said someone would meet us there after checking our address. Daniel thanked him. I could not. My mouth felt too dry for gratitude. We drove in silence for nearly 10 minutes before Daniel spoke. "She warned us." "Yes. She went with him this morning, but now she's warning us." "Yes." He looked at the road. "So maybe she wasn't part of it. Or maybe she was, until something changed." That was the worst part. I no longer knew how to sort truth from performance. Every memory with Ryan and Melissa over the past 2 years now felt slippery in my mind, like old floorboards giving way under my feet. The hotel was small and forgettable, one of those roadside places people only use when they have nowhere else to be. Daniel checked us in while I sat in the lobby staring at the muted television over the coffee station. Some cheerful woman on a cooking show was smiling about blueberry muffins, while my entire life felt like it had cracked down the middle. When we got into the room, Daniel locked the door, then checked it twice. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just the kind of crying that leaks out when your heart cannot hold everything anymore. Daniel sat beside me. "Linda." I covered my face. I knew something was wrong, and I still got in the car. "You saved us." I shook my head. What kind of mother has to save her husband from her own son? He put his arm around me, and for a while neither of us said anything. Then my phone buzzed again. "Melissa." This time it was a call. I answered at once. "Melissa." Her breathing was ragged. "Are you alone?" "No." "Is Ryan there?" "No." She let out a shaky breath. "Good. Where are you?" "I can't say that yet." My patience snapped. "You had better start saying a lot more than that, right now." There was silence, then I heard her crying. Not the neat little tears she used when she wanted sympathy at Thanksgiving. Real crying. Messy, frightened, out of control. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry." Daniel moved closer so he could hear. What happened? I asked. He owes money, a lot of money. How much? Another pause. Almost 90,000. Daniel stood up so fast the chair near the window scraped the floor. 90,000, I repeated. Melissa started talking too fast, the way people do when fear finally beats pride. It started with a business idea. At least that's what he told me. A truck leasing thing with one of his friends. Then it turned into loans, then private lenders, then more loans to cover the first loans. He kept saying one good month would fix it. He kept saying he could make it back before anyone found out. My stomach twisted. And when did you find out? Not all at once. Little things, final notices, calls, strange men outside the apartment. Then I found papers in his car last month. I gripped the phone tighter. Did he ask them to come after us? No, she said quickly, then stopped. The hesitation told me more than her answer. Melissa. He told them you and Daniel had money, she whispered. He told them you would help if you understood how serious it was. I stood up. That is not the same as luring us onto an empty road. I know. Then explain it. Her next words came out broken. He didn't mean for it to go that far. Daniel swore under his breath. I closed my eyes. What did he mean then? He said if you got scared enough, maybe your husband would finally give him access to the investment account. I felt something cold spread through my chest. The investment account. That was not just retirement money. That was the money Daniel and I had set aside for our future, our medical costs, the quiet years we had earned after a lifetime of work. Ryan knew that. He knew exactly what that money meant. He planned to threaten us, I asked. He said no, one would get hurt. He said it was just going to be pressure, just enough to make you both understand this was bigger than family pride. I laughed, a horrible sound I did not recognize as mine. Family pride. Melissa began crying again. I told him not to do it. I told him this was insane. But this morning he got a call and everything changed. The men said if he didn't deliver, they'd come to the apartment. Then he told me to get dressed and act normal. Why text me? Because I heard him talking after you turned around. He was angry. He said, if they don't come to the lodge, then the house is the next move. Daniel grabbed the phone. Where is my son? I don't know, Melissa said, sobbing harder. He left. He told me to stay put. Then one of the men showed up and said if I wanted to keep my baby safe, I should keep my mouth shut. Daniel froze. Baby. I looked at him sharply. Melissa sniffed. I'm pregnant. The room went still. Of all the things I thought she might say, that was nowhere in my mind. Ryan had not told us. Of course he had not. Why would he? Bobby's were joy, responsibility, hope, and none of that fit the life he had built on lies. How far along? I asked. 3 months. A strange pain moved through me then. Even with everything else, that news landed where all news of a coming child lands, deep in the heart. But it had barely touched down before it was smothered by fear. Where are you? I asked again. At my cousin's place. Ryan doesn't know I came here. Text me the address. I'm afraid. So am I. That seemed to reach her. A moment later, the address came through. Daniel sat down hard in the chair by the window. His face looked hollow. She's pregnant, he said, as if saying it might help him understand the rest. I sat on the bed again, my mind racing. He hid debt. He lied to us. He let strangers chase us. He nearly handed us over for money, and all while his wife was pregnant. Daniel's voice was rough. That boy is gone. No, I said quietly. That boy is buried, under fear, pride, and one rotten choice after another, but he's still in there somewhere. He looked up at me, angry now. After this, you still want to find excuses for him. I'm not finding excuses. Then what are you doing? I looked him in the eye. I'm getting ready. For what? For the part where he begs us to understand, and I decide whether I still can. The room fell quiet. Then there was a knock at the door. Not a light knock, 3 firm hits. Daniel and I both stood. My heart jumped into my throat. The deputy had said he would call first. Nobody called. Another 3 knocks came, harder this time. Then a man's voice through the door. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, front desk sent me. Your son is downstairs." Daniel moved toward the door. I caught his arm, because something in that voice told me one terrible thing. Ryan had not come to ask for help. He had come to collect us himself. Daniel pulled his arm from my hand and whispered, "Get behind me." But I did not move. Something had changed in me since that road, since the truck, since Melissa's trembling voice told me my own son had put a price on our safety. Fear was still there, yes, heavy and cold, but now it was sitting beside something else, a hard kind of clarity. The knocking came again. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter," the man said. "Your son says this is urgent." I looked toward the bedside table where my phone lay charging. The deputy's card was right beside it. I grabbed both. "Do not open that door," I whispered. Daniel nodded, though every part of him looked wound tight enough to snap. I called the deputy, straight to voicemail. My stomach dropped. I called again. Still nothing. The knocking stopped. For one long second, there was silence outside the room. Then I heard footsteps moving away. Daniel let out a breath. Maybe they left. "No," I said. "Men like that don't leave because we stayed quiet." I crossed to the window and carefully pulled the curtain aside with 2 fingers. Down in the parking lot, near a dark sedan with tinted windows, stood Ryan. The sight of him hit me like a punch. He was packing with his phone in one hand, running the other through his hair the way he had since he was 16 whenever he was scared or cornered. For a tiny, painful second, he did not look like a traitor. He looked like my boy on the worst day of his life. Then one of the men beside him shoved his shoulder, hard enough to snap me back to reality. Ryan looked up toward the building, toward our room. I let the curtain fall at once. "He's here," I whispered. Daniel's face hardened in a way I had never seen before. "Then let him come." "No." He turned to me. "No. If he's here with them, then opening this door gives them what they want. So what do you suggest?" I looked down at the deputy's card and saw a second number scribbled on the back, the local sheriff's office direct line. I dialed it. This time somebody picked up. I spoke low and fast, gave the hotel name, the room number, the description of the car, Ryan's name, the earlier chase, Melissa's message, everything. The woman on the line told us officers were on the way and said very clearly, "Do not leave the room. Do not engage. Stay away from the window." Daniel sat on the edge of the bed after I hung up, elbows on knees, face in his hands. He looked exhausted, furious, and broken all at once. "I should have stopped this sooner," he said. I sat beside him. This did not start today. No, but I kept helping him hide from consequences. I told myself I was being a father. I told myself one more rescue would save him. He looked up at me, eyes wet. All I did was teach him he could fall, and we would always be under him to break the impact. I wanted to say something comforting, but there was no comfort large enough for what had happened. So I told the truth. "Yes," I said softly, "you did." He nodded once, like a man accepting a sentence. We waited in silence for several minutes, every sound outside sharpening our nerves. A car door slammed. Someone laughed in the hallway. Ice rattled in a machine down the corridor. Ordinary noises, terrible noises. The kind that make you realize how vulnerable a locked door really is. Then my phone buzzed. "Ryan." I stared at it. Daniel saw the screen. "Answer it." I did. "Mom," his voice was low, urgent. "Please, just listen to me." I stood and moved toward the far side of the room. "You have one chance. I can fix this." I almost laughed. "You said that about the truck leasing deal. You said that about the credit cards. You said that about the second loan and the third lie and every mess you expected us to clean up. What exactly do those words mean now?" He was quiet for a second. Then he said, I never wanted anyone to hurt you. You brought strangers onto that road. I thought they would scare Dad, that's all. That's all, my voice rose before I could stop it. They chased us like animals. I know, and I'm sorry. Sorry. There are moments when a word becomes too small for what it is trying to carry. Sorry was a matchstick trying to hold up a burning house. Where's your wife? I asked. He hesitated. That told me Melissa had not told him where she was. Ryan, I said, my voice suddenly very calm. She called me. I heard him inhale sharply. What did she say? Enough. There was movement on his end, muffled voices. Then he came back more tense than before. Mom, if she told you where she is, you need to tell me. No. You don't understand. I understand that she is pregnant and afraid of her own husband. Silence. Then his voice broke. She told you. Yes. Another silence, but this one had grief inside it. I was going to tell you, he said. When? After we signed over our savings. After somebody got killed on that road. No. No, I said. Then tell me when, Ryan. Tell me what kind of man hides a baby while arranging to terrorize his own parents. His breathing turned ragged. I was drowning. You were lying. I didn't know how to stop. That is regret, I said. Not drowning. Regret is what comes after you choose wrong again and then suddenly realize there is no clean way back. He said nothing. Then quietly he asked, Do you hate me? That question almost undid me. Because no matter what he had done, some foolish, wounded part of my heart still knew exactly how his voice sounded when he was scared. Still knew the shape of his pain. Still loved him. That was the cruelty of family. Love does not evaporate when trust dies. It stays and watches the wreckage. I hate what you chose, I said. And if I had listened to my anger instead of my instincts this morning, your father and I might be dead. A choked sound came through the line. Mom, he whispered. Then a man's voice barked something near him, harsh and impatient. I stiffened. Ryan, I said, get away from them. I can't. You can. No, he said, and for the first time all day I heard the full truth in his voice. I really can't. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. Daniel stood up. What happened? Before I could answer, there were sirens outside. Not one patrol car, several. The parking lot exploded into noise, tires, shouted commands, doors slamming. Daniel rushed to the window, then stopped himself and stepped back. We waited, frozen in place, while voices echoed outside the building. Then came one single sound that sliced through me. Ryan yelling. Not angry, not dramatic. Terrified. A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door, this time followed by the sheriff's voice identifying himself. Daniel opened it. 2 officers stood there. Behind them, at the far end of the hall, I could see paramedics moving quickly toward the stairs. The sheriff, a broad older man with weary eyes, looked at us gravely. You're safe now, he said. I gripped the edge of the dresser. Where is my son? He took off his hat. He tried to run when the officers moved in, he said. One of the men with him pulled a gun. There was a struggle in the parking lot. I felt the room tilt. Is Ryan alive? Daniel asked, voice barely human. The sheriff nodded once. He's alive, shot in the side. The paramedics are working on him now. My legs almost gave way. Daniel caught my arm. The sheriff continued, The other 2 men are in custody. We also recovered documents from the car. Property records, bank printouts, your home address, account notes, retirement details. I looked at him blankly. Daniel understood first. I saw it in his face. They were going to take everything, he said. The sheriff's expression did not change. From what we can tell, yes. Your son gave them enough information to pressure you. Maybe he thought it would stop at intimidation. But these men were planning more than that. I closed my eyes. There it was. The full shape of the betrayal beginning to show itself. This had never been about one bad road or one reckless scare. Ryan had opened our lives to predators. Our money, our home, our routines, our names. He had invited danger into the center of everything his father and I had spent decades building. And yet, somehow, hearing he had been shot did not feel like justice. It felt like the bill had finally come due. The sheriff asked a few more questions, then told us Ryan was being taken to County Memorial. We could go there once officers finished with the scene. After he left, Daniel sat down heavily in the chair. "I don't know if I want to see him," he said. I stood by the bed, staring at nothing. I thought of Melissa, carrying a child into this disaster. I thought of the house, the accounts, the lies. I thought of the boy who once cried when his goldfish died, and the man who had just sold out his own parents. Then I looked at Daniel. "We are going," I said. He looked up. "Why?" "Because the revenge started when I realized what he had done," I said. "But it does not end with me abandoning the truth." He frowned. "What does that mean?" I picked up my purse. "It means Ryan is finally going to hear every single thing his choices cost him. His money, his marriage, his child, his home, his parents, all of it." I moved toward the door, my hand steady now. "And when I'm done," I said, "he will beg for forgiveness I may never give." County Memorial smelled like antiseptic, old coffee, and fear. That is the only way I can describe it. Hospitals always carry fear, even when nobody says it out loud. It hangs in the waiting rooms, in the slow footsteps, in the way people hold paper cups and stare at walls as if one right thought might change everything. Daniel and I arrived just after sunset. The sheriff had already called ahead, so an officer met us near the emergency entrance and led us to a quieter hallway away from the main waiting area. Melissa was there. The second she saw us, she stood up so quickly her chair nearly tipped over. Her face was blotchy from crying. Her mascara had run. Her perfect hair from that morning was now pulled into a loose, messy knot. For once, she looked exactly how she felt, scared, worn out, and completely out of control. "I'm sorry," she said before I even reached her. "I am so, so sorry." I looked at her for a long moment. "You should be," I said. She lowered her eyes and started crying again. Daniel leaned against the wall, his face pale with exhaustion. He looked at Melissa, then at me, then away. I could tell he had nothing left in him for anger right then. Pain was taking up too much room. A doctor came out a few minutes later and told us Ryan had lost blood but would live. The bullet had gone through his side without hitting anything vital. He would need surgery, time, and a lot of follow-up care, but he was stable. Stable. Such a small word for a man who had blown up his own life. The doctor asked who would see him first. Daniel stayed silent. Melissa looked at me like a child waiting for punishment. "I'll go," I said. Nobody argued. The room was dim except for the soft hospital light near the bed. Machines beeped quietly. Ryan looked smaller than I had ever seen him, pale under the white sheets, lips dry, eyes half open with pain and medication. For a moment, all I saw was my child. Not the man from the parking lot. Not the liar from my kitchen. Not the desperate son who had opened the door to criminals. Just the little boy I had once held after he scraped his knee on the driveway. Then he turned his head, saw me, and started crying. That snapped the illusion. "Mom." His voice cracked on the word. I closed the door behind me and walked closer, but I did not sit. "You nearly got us killed." His face twisted. "I know. You nearly let strangers come into our home." "I know. You gave them our address, our routines, details about our savings. You handed over pieces of our lives like they were bargaining chips." He winced, whether from pain or shame I could not tell. I thought I could control it. "No," I said. "You thought you could use us." That landed. He shut his eyes, and tears slid down the sides of his face. "I didn't mean for it to become this." I let out a slow breath. That is the sentence weak people say when their choices finally look ugly enough to them. His mouth trembled. Mom, please. No, you listen now. I stepped closer, and every word came from somewhere deep, somewhere that had been filling with grief for years. You want to know when this started? It did not start with $90,000. It started the first time you learned that tears and panic would make your father rescue you. It started the first time you lied, and we accepted half a truth because facing the full truth was too painful. It started when you stopped being ashamed of using love as a tool. He cried harder. You did not suddenly become this man today. You became him one excuse at a time. He turned his face away. I know. And now you have a wife who is afraid of you, a baby you did not protect, a father you broke, and a mother standing here trying to understand how the boy she raised became someone willing to trade our lives for time. He whispered. I was scared. So were we. For a while, the only sound was the monitor. Then he said, in a voice so small I almost missed it, Did Melissa tell you about the baby? Yes. His eyes filled again. I wanted to fix everything before I told you. I laughed sadly. That is your disease, Ryan. Not money, not bad luck. Pride. You always want to fix the appearance before you face the truth. He swallowed hard. Is Dad here? Yes. Will he come in? I don't know. He cried quietly for a minute, then whispered, I never thought he would get hurt. I looked at him and finally understood something clearly. That is because you did not let yourself think of us as real people, I said. Only resources, a house, an account, a backup plan. You stripped us down in your mind until using us became easier than loving us. He stared at me with horror in his eyes because he knew it was true. That was my revenge. Not screaming. Not humiliating him in public. Not leaving him to rot in that room. The revenge was making him sit in the full truth of what he had become, without any soft place left to hide. When I stepped out, Daniel was still by the wall, staring at the floor. He wants to see you, I said. Daniel did not move. After a long silence, he asked, Did he ask if I was angry? No. What did he ask? If you would come in. Daniel shut his eyes. Then he pushed himself off the wall and went into the room. Melissa looked at me, trembling. What did he say? He said what people say when the fire reaches their feet. She looked confused. He is sorry now, I said, now that he can smell the smoke. She sat down slowly, one hand over her stomach. I took the chair across from her. For the first time since that morning, I looked at her not just as Ryan's wife, but as a frightened young woman carrying my grandchild inside the ruins of a marriage. Why did you stay with him? I asked. She wiped her face. Because every time I thought about leaving, he would have one good week, one hopeful speech, one promise that made me think the man I married was still there. I nodded. That made sense. It was not so different from what Daniel and I had done as parents. What will you do now? I asked. She looked down at her belly. I'm leaving him. The words came out shaky, but firm. I believed her. He can see the baby one day, she said softly, if he becomes someone safe. Not charming, not sorry, safe. I sat back and let that settle. That too was truth. Daniel stayed in Ryan's room a long time. When he came out, his face was wet but calmer than before. Not healed, not softened, just emptied. Well, I asked. He looked at me like a man who had walked through a fire and left something behind in it. I told him I loved him, he said, and I told him I will not rescue him again. I felt my chest tighten. That was the sentence Daniel should have spoken years earlier. The next few weeks changed everything. The practical consequences came first. We froze our accounts and changed every password. We put extra locks and cameras on the house. We worked with the sheriff and the bank fraud team. We learned the men Ryan dealt with had been running pressure schemes for years, targeting desperate people, and then using family property and fear to squeeze more money out of them. Ryan had given them documents, account notes, and enough personal information to make us vulnerable. Melissa had been telling the truth. He had not started out wanting blood, but he had kept going long after the danger was clear. That was what made the regret so heavy. He had many chances to stop. He just never did. The emotional consequences were worse. Melissa moved in with her cousin and filed for legal separation before Ryan was even discharged from the hospital. She refused to let him come with her. She later sent a clear message through her lawyer that contact would be limited and supervised after the baby was born, if his behavior and the legal process allowed it. Ryan was arrested after his release. The charges were not small: financial fraud, conspiracy, reckless endangerment, cooperation with known criminals. His lawyer tried to frame him as scared and manipulated, and that part was true, but fear did not erase his choices. He had caused the pain. He had betrayed us because he was desperate, proud, and drowning in debt. His mistake was believing he could control evil once he invited it in. Melissa had tried to warn him, then warn us. He had hidden the debt, the danger, and the pregnancy. Carol had not covered anything up. She had simply been used. Daniel and I had been chosen because we were the people he believed would always pay to keep him safe. That was why revenge became necessary, not to destroy him, but to stop protecting the lie. That was the lesson I had to learn too. Because truth without consequences is only advice. And advice had never changed Ryan. One Sunday, about 2 months later, Daniel and I were sitting on the back porch drinking coffee when he said, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't trusted your instincts?" "All the time," I said. The morning light was soft. Birds moved through the yard. Somewhere down the street, a child laughed. Ordinary life had returned, but it no longer felt casual to me. It felt precious, earned. "I keep hearing your voice," Daniel said quietly. "Turn the car around right now." I looked at him. "You listened." He gave me a sad smile. "It saved us." "Yes," I said, "it did." A week after that, I got a letter from Ryan. Handwritten. No excuses, no speeches, no requests for money, just page after page of shame, grief, and finally, honesty. He admitted he had spent years resenting our stability because it reminded him of his own failures. He admitted he kept taking from us because part of him believed parents were supposed to suffer for their children. He admitted he did not face the truth until he saw a gun in that parking lot and realized he had brought death to our door. At the end he wrote, "I do not know if you will ever forgive me, but I finally understand that regret is not pain you feel. It is pain you cause and then must live with." That was the first truly grown thing he had ever said. I did not write back right away. Some people think forgiveness is the same thing as reunion. It is not. Sometimes forgiveness is quiet, slow, distant. Sometimes it means letting go of hatred without reopening the door. Months later, when Melissa gave birth to a little girl with Ryan's eyes and her own stubborn chin, she let Daniel and me visit. I held that baby in my arms and felt something in me soften, not toward the past, but toward the future. Family damage can spread for generations. So can healing, if someone is finally brave enough to stop the pattern. Before I end, let me say this gently: if this story touched you, please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps more than you know. I looked down at my granddaughter and whispered a promise she was too young to understand. "You will not inherit this silence," I said. And that was the real ending. Not the road. Not the gun. Not even the betrayal. The ending was this: the moment I chose truth over protection, consequences over denial, and love strong enough to stop calling ruin by a kinder name. My son lost nearly everything because of what he did. But maybe, just maybe, losing the lie was the first thing that might someday save him.